relation to disease and death are in reality only the working out of certain basic principles which govern rightly or wrongly, who shall say? The life of God in form, and they must ever remain incomprehensible to man until such time as he takes the great initiation which is symbolized for us in the Transfiguration. All along in our studies, we shall be dealing with secondary causes, and their effects, with the phenomenal results of those subjective effects which emanate from causes too far away for us to grasp. This should be admitted and grasped. This is the best man can do with his present mental apparatus. When the intuition really works, and the mind is seldom illumined, why should man arrogantly expect to understand everything? Let him work at the development of his intuition, and at achieving illumination. Understanding may then come his way. He will have earned the right to divine knowledge. But the above recognition will suffice for our work, and will enable us to lay down those laws and principles which will indicate the way humanity may gain release from the form consciousness, and consequent immunity from the victory of death, and those disease-dealing conditions which govern today our planetary manifestation. We will divide our consideration of the causes of disease into 3 parts, eliminating from our quest for truth the quite understandable but equally futile desire to apprehend the mind of deity. I. The psychological causes. II. Causes emanating from group life. III. Our karmic liabilities, the karmic causes. In all this we shall but gain a general idea, all that is now possible, as to the presence of disease in the human family, and of that to be found also, in part, in the animal kingdom. When this general idea is grasped, we shall have a clearer understanding of our problem and can then proceed with our consideration of the methods, which will enable us to handle the undesirable effects with greater facility. Students of the art of healing should likewise remember that there are 3 ways in which healing can be brought about, and that all 3 ways have their place and value, dependent upon the point in evolution of the subject being healed. First, there is the application of those palliatives and ameliorating methods which gradually cure disease and eliminate undesirable conditions. They build up the form life and foster the vitality, so that disease can be thrown off. Of these methods the allopathic and the homeopathic schools, and the various osteopathic and chiropractic, and other therapeutic schools are good exponents. They have done much good and constructive work, and the debt of humanity to the wisdom, skill and unselfish attentions of the physicians is great. They are dealing all the time with urgent conditions, and dangerous effects, of causes which are not apparent on the surface. Under these methods, the patient is in the hands of an outside party, and should be passive, quiescent and negative. Secondly, there is the appearance of the work and methods of the modern psychologist, who seeks to deal with subjective conditions and to straighten out those wrong attitudes of mind, those inhibitions, psychoses, and complexes which bring about the outer states or disease, the morbid conditions and neurotic and mental disasters. Under this method, the patient is taught to cooperate, as much as he can with the psychologist, so that he may arrive at a proper understanding of himself, and so learn to eradicate those inner compelling situations which are responsible for the outer results. He is trained to be positive and active, and this is a great step in the right direction. The tendency to combine psychology with the outer physical treatment is sound and right. Thirdly, the highest and the newest method is that of calling into positive activity a man's own soul. The true and the future healing is brought about when the life of the soul can flow without any impediment and hindrance throughout every aspect of the form nature. It can then vitalize it with its potency, and can also eliminate those congestions and obstructions which are such a fruitful source of disease. This gives you much to ponder upon. If we go slowly as regards the practical application of techniques and methods, it is because I seek to lay a sound foundation for that which I shall later impart. The training of the healer. As regards the training of the healer, I will give from time to time the 6 rules which govern, or should govern, his activity. Bear in mind the 2 words which I earlier gave. They sum up the healer's story. Magnetism and radiation. They are different in their effects, as we shall later see. Rule 1. The healer must seek to link his soul, his heart, his brain and his hands. Thus can he pour the vital healing force upon the patient. This is magnetic work. It cures disease, or may increase the so-called evil state, according to the knowledge of the healer. The healer must seek to link his soul, his brain, his heart and auric emanation. Thus can his presence feed the soul life of the patient. This is the work of radiation. The hands are needed not. The soul displays its power. The patient's soul responds through the response of his aura to the radiation of the healer's aura, flooded with soul energy. In considering the causes of disease, I find it necessary to speak a word in connection with conditions external and internal. It will be apparent to the casual thinker that many diseases and many causes of death are due to environing conditions for which he is in no way responsible. These range all the way from purely external occurrences to hereditary predispositions. They might be listed as follows. 1. Accidents, which may be due to personal negligence, group happenings, the carelessness of other people, and the results of fighting, as in labor strikes or war. They can also be brought about by attacks from the animal or the snake world, accidental poisonings and many other causes. 2. Infections coming to a man from outside and not as the result of his own peculiar blood condition. Such infections are the various so-called infectious and contagious diseases, and prevalent epidemics. These may come to a man in the line of duty, through his daily contacts, or through a widespread condition of disease in his environment. 3. Diseases due to malnutrition, particularly when found in the young. This state of undernourishment predisposes the body to disease, lowers the resistance, and the vitality, and offsets the fighting powers of the man, leading to premature death. 4. Heredity. There are, as you well know, certain forms of hereditary weaknesses, which either predispose a person to certain illnesses, and consequent death, or produce in him those conditions which lead to a steady weakening of his hold on life. There are also those tendencies which constitute a form of dangerous appetite, which lead to undesirable habits, a letting down of the morale, and are dangerous to the will of the person, rendering him futile to fight these predispositions. He succumbs to them and pays the price of such habits, which is disease and death. These 4 types of disease and causes of death account for much that we see happening around us in people's lives, but they are not to be classed definitely under any of the psychological causes of disease, and will only be considered, and that very briefly, under the section dealing with group life and its predisposing causes of disease. Infectious diseases are there dealt with, but such situations as arise out of an automobile or railroad accident, for instance, are not to be considered as coming under the heading of causes producing disease. That the work of the healer may be involved in these cases is quite true, but the work to be done is somewhat different to that accomplished when dealing with those diseases which have their roots in some subtle body, or other, or in the results of group disease, etc. The ills growing out of malnutrition and the wrong feeding of our modern life and civilization will not here be considered. For these no child is individually responsible. I am concerned with the diseases arising in wrong internal conditions. The responsibility of the child for his living conditions is practically nil, unless you admit karma as a predisposing factor, and its power to produce those readjustments which emerge out of the past and affect the present. I shall deal with this more fully under our 3rd point, dealing with our karmic liabilities. I would only suggest here that the whole subject of disease could be treated from the angle of karma, and be definite and conclusive in its value had there been right teaching on this abstruse subject from the time that it was given out in the West. But the truth as it has come to us from the East has been as much distorted by the Eastern theologian, as the doctrines of the atonement and of the virgin birth have been misinterpreted and taught by the Western theologian. The real truth bears little resemblance to our modern formulations. I am, therefore, seriously handicapped when dealing with the subject of disease from the angle of karma. It is difficult for me to convey to you anything of the truth as it really exists, owing to the preconceived ideas as to the ancient law of cause and effect which are necessarily in your mind. When I say to you that the doctrine of emergent evolution, and the modern theories of the work of a catalyst upon two substances which when brought into relation with each other under the effect of the catalyst produce a third and different substance carrying them much of the truth and karma, will you understand? I question it. When I say to you that the emphasis given to the law of karma as it explains apparent injustices, and stresses always the appearance of pain, disease, and suffering gives only partial presentation of the basic cosmic truth, is your mind in any way clarified? When I point out that the law of karma, rightly understood and rightly wielded, can bring that which produces happiness, good, and freedom from pain more easily than it brings pain, with its chain of consequences, do you feel able to grasp the significance of what I am saying? The world of glamour is at this time so strong and the sense of illusion so potent and vital, that we fail to see these basic laws in their true significance. The law of karma is not the law of retribution, as one would surmise, as one reads the current books upon the subject. That is but one aspect of the working of the law of karma. The law of cause and effect is not to be understood, as we now interpret it. There is, to illustrate, a law called the law of gravitation, which has long imposed itself upon the minds of men. Such a law exists, but it is only an aspect of the greater law, and its power can be, as we know, relatively offset, for each time that we see an aeroplane soaring overhead, we see a demonstration of the offsetting of this law by mechanical means, symbolizing the ease with which it can be surmounted by human beings. If they could but realize it, they are learning the ancient technique of which the power to levitate is one of the easiest and simplest initial exercises. The law of consequences is not the inevitable and set affair which modern thought surmises, but is related to the laws of thought far more closely than has been believed. Towards an understanding of this, mental science has been groping. Its orientation and purposes are right and good and hopeful of results. Its conclusions and modes of work are at present woefully at fault, and most misleading. I have referred to this misunderstanding of the law of karma as I am anxious to have you set out on the study of the laws of healing with a free and open mind as far as may be, realizing that your understanding of these laws is limited by 1. Old theologies, with their static, distorted, and erroneous points of view. The teaching of theology is most misleading, but is, alas, generally accepted. 2. World thought,